Hello, my name is Tamara Vrooman, and I am the chair of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. I'd like to welcome you to our annual public meeting. I'm joining you from my workplace in Vancouver at the Vancouver International Airport. The Vancouver Airport is located on Sea Island, which is the traditional territory of the Musqueam people. YVR has a long, prosperous relationship with Musqueam, and I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge elders past and present. I was thrilled to take on the leadership role of the chair of the CIB board earlier this year in February. The CIB has such an important mandate going forward, not only as we think about the future economy of our country, but also the kind of country that we want to build. You know, throughout my career, I've been focused as the Deputy Minister of Finance, as the CEO of Van City Credit Union, on using finance and capital to create the future that we want and we need, not only for our country, but for our communities and for our kids. And so when I was asked by the Government of Canada to take on this role, I could see no better way than to continue to focus on the future than to focus on the future of infrastructure in our country. Whether it's broadband, agriculture, trade, clean energy, the movement of people and goods, public transit, or electrification of transit and passenger and goods movement, it's all about future-proofing our economy and our communities. In October of last year, we introduced our $10 billion growth plan, focused on climate change and connecting Canadians as we come out of the pandemic. I'm pleased to say that we're already ahead of schedule, and the early days of the plan are showing great promise. We've executed on a number of fronts, be it Indigenous infrastructure, be it transit, be it agriculture and trade, or connectivity and broadband and clean energy. And I know our CEO, Ehren Cory, will want to tell you in more detail about the improvements that we're making. We also have a very clear mandate from our shareholder, the Government of Canada. And they have told us that they want us to focus on the future, to accelerate financing and funding for infrastructure, to ensure that things that might not get built when we need to get them built are built in a timely way to see the recovery coming out of the pandemic accelerated. I'm very optimistic about the future of the bank. We have a lot of work to do, however, and our new CEO and the management team have been head down, focused on getting investments done with partners in both the public and private sector. I know how important the role of the bank is, not only to our shareholder, but to our communities and the people who rely on infrastructure to get to work, to get to school, to see loved ones, and to build our communities. I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to chair the board of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, and I look forward to continuing to engage with you as we conduct our important work. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ehren Cory, the CEO of Canada Infrastructure Bank, to tell you more about the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Hello, everyone. My name is Ehren Cory, and I'm the CEO of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Thank you for joining our annual public meeting. I'm coming to you today from Toronto, in fact, from my basement office, as I guess is the norm in these unprecedented times. Toronto, my home city, is the traditional home of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And today, of course, is the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I joined the CIB last November, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to share with you the highlights of our work over this past year and my enthusiasm for where we're now headed. We are on track to increase investment and to build new infrastructure across Canada. And I'd like to start with a few highlights of the actions and results that have been achieved by the CIB over the past 6 months. First, last October, we announced our $10 billion growth plan, which is our contribution to pandemic recovery to build new infrastructure that creates jobs and accelerates Canada's transition to a low-carbon economy. En octobre dernier, nous avons lancé le plan de croissance de 10 milliards de dollars. C'est notre contribution à la relance économique après la pandémie. Il permettra la construction de nouvelles infrastructures pour créer des emplois et accélérer la transition du Canada vers une économie à faible émission de carbone. Second, we followed that launch with several new investments in real projects. This is the growth plan in action, and it includes examples like a $407 million investment in the Alberta irrigation project, a $133 million investment in a new Southern Manitoba fiber broadband initiative, an MOU for the Oneida energy storage project here in Ontario, which will lead to hundreds of millions of dollars in CIB and private sector investment, as well as our first zero-emission bus, energy retrofit, and new transmission infrastructure investment, all that will be announced in conjunction with our partners over the course of the coming months. Third, beyond those projects, we have built a pipeline for further investment opportunities, which gives us an exciting outlook to Canada Day 2021 and beyond. Since the launch of the growth plan last fall, we expect to make $2.5 billion of CIB investment, which, along with $2.6 billion in non-government investment from private and institutional investors, and around $700 million in government grants, will total capital investment of nearly $6 billion. Added to our earlier investments like the REM project in Montreal, this amounts to $3.8 billion of total CIB capital deployed, along with nearly $6 billion in private and institutional capital, for a total project value of over $12 billion since our inception. Fourth, we launched our Indigenous Community Infrastructure Initiative, which is designed to provide a minimum of $5 million for up to 80% of the capital cost of community infrastructure projects across our priority sectors. This is one important step in achieving our overall $1 billion target of investing in infrastructure in partnership with and for the benefit for Indigenous peoples. And we view that target as a floor, not a ceiling, and look forward to many projects in the future in this important space. Nous avons lancé l'initiative d'infrastructure pour les communautés autochtones. Elle permettra de fournir un minimum de 5 millions de dollars et jusqu'à 80% de coûts en capital des projets d'infrastructure communautaires dans nos secteurs prioritaires. C'est un excellent moyen d'atteindre notre objectif global d'1 milliard de dollars d'investissement dans les infrastructures en partenariat avec les Autochtones pour leurs bénéfices. And fifth, we released our unsolicited proposals framework to outline how the CIB can encourage the private sector to bring forward innovative project proposals. We will offer our expertise and facilitate public and private partners in assessing these proposals to determine if they solve concrete infrastructure problems and open up new investment opportunities. These 5 highlights are significant and show how the CIB is headed in the right direction to deliver investments that lead to new infrastructure and important outcomes for Canadians. Now, with those examples of momentum front and center, I'd like to give you some further perspective about the CIB, our activities over the past year. The reality that Canada and other countries face today is that we need to find new ways to stretch public funds further to get new infrastructure built. Canada is far from alone from this. Nearly every country in the world faces a significant infrastructure gap. And increasingly, other countries, especially the United States and UK, have announced their intentions to renew investment in infrastructure with great ambition. In the UK, they have just recently launched an infrastructure bank that is very much like the CIB. And in the US, there is a significant new push on infrastructure investment. It's important to put all of this in context. Governments could increase budgets to provide more grants, but that approach has fiscal limits and doesn't always achieve performance results or share risks in the real world. Or governments could expect the private sector to do more of this on its own. And it's true, many infrastructure projects do get built on purely commercial terms because there's a private sector investment and the impetus to do so. But that approach does not always deliver the kind of public infrastructure we need or that serves the public good. So the CIB represents a middle way and is designed to put public and private sector investment to work together. There are a significant number of projects where our approach can get projects built for less public investment while creating the incentives for the private sector to innovate and deliver significantly improved outcomes. So let me talk about what we do and how we do it. Simply put, our job is to make sure public dollars can go further by investing in revenue-generating projects that are in the public interest. We focus on a range of sectors for these investments, including clean power, broadband, green infrastructure, trade and transportation, and transit. And we have an explicit goal, as I mentioned, to invest in infrastructure projects across all of those sectors that partner with and benefit Indigenous peoples. In each of these areas of investment, we are flexible, adaptable, and targeted so that our way of investing helps to get the infrastructure built. While we are disciplined in our focus on the priority sectors and rigorous in our investment decision-making, we are not one-size-fits-all in our approach. Notre travail consiste à optimiser les fonds publics en investissant dans des projets d'infrastructure générateurs de revenus qui sont dans l'intérêt public. Nous concentrons nos investissements sur des secteurs prioritaires: énergie propre, Internet à haut débit, infrastructure verte, commerce et transport en commun. Nous avons également pour objectif explicite d'investir dans les infrastructures en partenariat avec les peuples autochtones et au profit de ces derniers. Et dans chacun de ces secteurs d'investissement, nous savons nous adapter et faire preuve de souplesse afin que notre façon d'investir contribue à la construction de nouvelles infrastructures. Bien que nous soyons disciplinés dans notre engagement envers les secteurs prioritaires et rigoureux dans nos décisions d'investissement, notre approche n'est pas uniforme. We structure each investment to crowd in private sector investors who are willing to share in the risk and innovate. By doing so, we are able to tap into the huge pools of capital that are available in the private and institutional sectors. We can help make this happen by financing projects at lower rates, by absorbing some risks that are impediments to project happening, thereby catalyzing private sector investment and performance to deliver projects. Ultimately, by drawing on the savings from the life cycle of the project or through the revenues that are generated from the project, we unlock new sources to pay for our much needed infrastructure. Now, the CIB does not do grants, and the CIB does not invest when the private sector can do so alone. And I'd like to be extremely clear that the CIB does not have a mandate to sell public assets or privatize in any way. Soyons clairs, la BIC n'octroie pas de subventions et elle n'investit pas lorsque le secteur privé peut le faire seul. Et je tiens à préciser que la BIC n'a pas comme mandat de vendre des biens publics. La BIC représente une nouvelle façon crédible pour compléter l'apport en capital public et d'attirer les capitaux privés au besoin. We also provide advice to all levels of government and act as a center of knowledge and expertise. As such, the CIB is just one part of a strong infrastructure investment ecosystem in Canada. We're lucky to have it. This is construction firms, design firms, engineering, finance, and legal companies, all that make the market more creative and competitive. Now, if those points address the what and the how, allow me to speak to why this matters so much. New infrastructure is a means to an end. What we really aim to achieve is much more than building things. It's about outcomes. For instance, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and moving to a net zero economy, increasing connectivity of Canadians through both improved transit and new digital infrastructure, and driving economic growth, including through investments in trade infrastructure. Achieving those outcomes contribute to Canada's economy, create jobs, and lead to more inclusion in Canadian society. And that is what we mean when we say we are focused on getting more infrastructure built. Our investments are not just money in projects, but meaningful outcomes for Canadians. Nos investissements sont guidés par l'objectif de ne pas simplement investir de l'argent dans des projets, mais d'obtenir des résultats. On a personal note, this is why I came to the CIB. I see the many positive impacts that new infrastructure can have on people's lives and value the opportunity to make that happen. Now, let me turn to the future. The CIB's startup phase is over. We are past an inflection point, and the next 3 years will be dramatically different from the past. With renewed and strengthened leadership from our board, including from our new chair, who you've heard from today, and with clear priorities as outlined in the Minister's Statement of Priorities and Accountability, we have strong organizational foundations. We also have an excellent team of investment and finance professionals. We've attracted a really strong group of people with significant investment expertise who share a common purpose around leveraging the private sector to deliver public good. With all of this in place, we are well positioned to deliver on our aspirations. Over the next 3 years, as outlined in the growth plan, the CIB will invest $2.5 billion for clean power to support renewable generation and storage and to transmit clean electricity between provinces, territories, and regions, including to northern and Indigenous communities. $2 billion to connect small businesses to broadband in underserved communities so Canadians can better participate in the digital economy. $2 billion to invest in large-scale building retrofits to increase energy efficiency and help make communities more sustainable. $1.5 billion for agriculture irrigation projects to help the agriculture sector enhance production, strengthen Canada's food security and expand export opportunities. $1.5 billion to accelerate the adoption of zero-emission buses and charging infrastructure so Canadians can have cleaner commutes. And finally, to accelerate the delivery of projects in which the CIB intends to invest, the growth plan also allocates $500 million for project development and early construction. And while we're focused on delivering the growth plan, we also remain equally balanced and focused on identifying projects that go deeper and broader in our priority sectors. We continue to focus on the overall goal of investing $35 billion over the long term. Now, to help bring the growth plan to life, I want to tell you a bit more about our progress and investments over the past 6 months. The Alberta Irrigation Project at $815 million is the largest investment in agricultural irrigation in the province's history. That project moved quickly from idea to investment in less than 9 months. The project will result in up to 6,800 direct and indirect permanent jobs and up to 1,280 construction jobs. Most importantly, it will result in over 200,000 acres of irrigated land, which will help increase crop production, support the economy, and mitigate the impacts of climate change. We expect that it will be the first of other initiatives to support agriculture specifically and trade-related infrastructure more broadly. Another project we've done under the growth plan is the United Energy Story project. This project is a joint venture between Enerstor and Six Nations of the Grand River Development Corporation. It's a perfect example of green tech innovation, private sector investment, inclusion and benefits for Indigenous peoples, and clean power that is part of our shift to a net zero economy. This will be the largest battery storage project in Canada and among the largest in the world. And in total, the CIB and its partners will be investing hundreds of millions of dollars, with details to be finalized later this spring. Another example, we've all realized during the pandemic that broadband is a necessity, not a luxury. Up to 49,000 households will benefit from the Southern Manitoba Fibre Broadband Project, which will help Manitobans receive broadband service and create new economic opportunities. This project, which we announced last month, supports access to public services like health and education, and it strengthens the economy in rural communities. The CIB and private sector partners will invest $260 million in total to significantly expand broadband in these underserved communities. This is a tremendous opportunity to expand broadband networks, and we look forward to making many more investments of this kind to the benefit of Canadians. Each of these 3 examples are innovative, impactful, and first-of-a-kind investments for the CIB. And speaking of first-of-a-kind investments, we are also creating initiatives with standard terms in key sectors where we can expect a high degree of consistency across projects and the potential for scalable investments. One example of this is in our zero-emission bus initiative, where we've established a clear set of terms for investments that will allow us to help transit agencies and school bus operators to access affordable long-term financing for zero-emission buses and the charging infrastructure that supports it. We are already seeing uptake to this program. Et en ce qui concerne des rénovations énergétiques de bâtiments, nous avons établi des paramètres d'investissement qui aboutiront à d'importantes rénovations à grande échelle de bâtiments commerciaux, y compris des immeubles résidentiels à logements multiples. De plus, nous collaborons étroitement avec les propriétaires publics d'installations municipales, d'universités, d'écoles et d'hôpitaux pour les soutenir dans leur effort de rénovation énergétique. And I mentioned earlier that we recently launched an Indigenous Community Infrastructure Initiative to target smaller scale projects in the $5 to $50 million range. In this way, the CIB can have a meaningful impact and improve conditions through infrastructure investment in many smaller and more remote communities that otherwise face challenges in accessing capital. The infrastructure gap in Indigenous communities is acute, and it is an important priority of the government and of the CIB to reduce this gap as part of its commitment to reconciliation. We welcome the priority objective from the Minister to achieve a $1 billion target in Indigenous infrastructure investments across our priority sectors. Beyond the growth plan, we are also working with partners on a range of projects that will take longer time to develop. This is an important point to make, that we are both focused on projects that are shorter-term opportunities for investment and longer-term projects that require additional development before investment decisions get made. Il existe un certain nombre d'occasions supplémentaires dans les secteurs de l'énergie propre, de transport en commun et des rénovations énergétiques. En plus des transactions, nous travaillons avec des partenaires sur un éventail de projets dont le développement prendra du temps. C'est un point important à souligner. Nous nous concentrons à la fois sur des projets qui sont des occasions d'investissement à court terme et sur des projets à long terme qui nécessitent un développement supplémentaire avant que les décisions d'investissement ne soient prises. For example, our work on the Calgary-Banff rail line, or our collaboration on the Kavalik transmission and fiber project. These are in fact two projects that have benefited from the CIB's project acceleration funds to speed up the analysis and due diligence for projects that the CIB hopes to make a long-term investment in. I'm confident that none of these projects would have happened in this innovative way, this quickly, and with the partnership between government and business if it were not for the CIB. Now, let me talk a little bit about our operations. This past year has been unlike any other for all of us. Like all organizations, the CIB had to move quickly to address the challenges of the pandemic. Working remotely, ensuring the safety of our staff, maintaining connections with our partners, and continuing to advance our priorities all tested our preparedness for this type of event. Fortunately, our business continuity planning, combined with the openness and flexibility of our team and our partners, has allowed us to manage the impacts. I personally, and nearly half of our employees, have experienced what it's like to start a new role during the pandemic. This has presented unique challenges for how to lead and has also opened up a new perspective for me and for many in our organization about how to effectively get things done while also building the culture and character of our organization. I am so encouraged by how the CIB team has adapted with resilience and determination to accelerate our development in the midst of the pandemic. But beyond this, and more importantly at the CIB, we know that through the infrastructure investments we make, we will be playing a part of the COVID response for our country, providing both immediate economic benefits and advancing long-term outcomes in terms of sustainability and growth. Bringing together our operational ability to work in the pandemic environment and our ability to play a role in recovery became a focus for our efforts and allowed us not only to manage the pandemic, but be part of the broader imperative to respond. Operationally at the CIB, our focus is on investments, and this is supported by a professional and experienced team of people who provide advisory services to our partners, conduct targeted research, manage finance, ensure good governance and legal practices, and build a diverse and inclusive organization through our human resources, and much more. Over the year, the CIB has expanded capacity while balancing our resources and our responsibilities, all the while staying within our approved budget as outlined in our summary corporate plan. Our financial statements, as set out in our annual reports and regular financial statements, show that we continue to operate within our plan. To date, our expenses have been less than planned due to lower headcount and related compensation costs, and lower than planned consulting and legal expenses. However, we anticipate our expenses will increase as our due diligence activities for projects intensify. Our revenues are in accordance with our expectations. The CIB is also strongly committed to diversity and inclusion. We have a strong and experienced woman as chair of our board, and there are many exceptional male and female directors. Within our staff, 40% of our employees are women. We operate as a bilingual organization, and over 30% of our employees can work in both official languages. La BIC s'est engagée envers la diversité et l'inclusion. Tamara est la deuxième femme à être présidente de notre conseil d'administration. Et notre conseil compte aussi de nombreux administrateurs et administratrices d'exception. Chez la BIC, 40% des employés sont des femmes. Nous fonctionnons comme une organisation bilingue et plus de 30% de nos employés peuvent travailler dans les deux langues officielles. At a recent Women's Infrastructure Network event, attended by 250 people across Canada, our chair and I spoke of our personal commitment to building a progressive, positive, diverse, and inclusive organization. With our employees' strong involvement, we are developing a more comprehensive policy and internal practices for diversity and inclusion to help shape the character of our organization going forward. An important element of this will be understanding any systemic bias and racism that affects our working environment to build the kind of culture and community we can all be proud of at the CIB. This is a priority around the world, and it's certainly a priority for us. At the same time, throughout this past year, we have continued to build operational capacity, including the development of our core systems and investment risk management processes. These efforts help to ensure that CIB can be a world-class organization with the authority and accountability for its results. With that, I'd like to conclude these remarks and this annual public meeting. I invite you to submit any questions you may have to us at the following address, apm.apa@cib-bic.ca. I hope you have found this presentation informative and that you will continue to stay engaged with the CIB as we invest in more infrastructure projects to deliver more outcomes for Canadians and Canada. Thank you.